Most people move to the country because they're running from something: crime, noise, neighbors, rules. I moved here because I wanted nothing and no one. Just sky, land, silence, and my cattle. My nearest neighbor was half a mile away. The subdivision, Mesa Ridge, sat behind a tree line and a cattle fence. All shiny new homes packed together like city blocks wearing cowboy boots. For 10 years, nobody bothered me. The fence stood where it always had. Cattle grazed. The windmill pumped water into the troughs, and life was quiet. Then Barbara Hensley moved in. People in town warned me before her moving truck even crossed the county line. They called her Border Karen because she policed everything on the border of that subdivision: trash cans, grass height, kids playing ball in driveways. Rumor said she once photographed people's lawns and emailed them color-coded violation reports. I didn't care. She wasn't my neighbor. She wasn't anything to me. Until the HOA decided I was technically adjacent land and therefore must submit to uniform property standards. The first letter arrived taped to my gate in a plastic sheet protector like it was a school assignment. Mr. Rhodes, you are now subject to Mesa Ridge HOA Ordinance 14B. You are in violation of aesthetic standards due to livestock, fencing, and non-landscaped acres. I stared at it, laughed, and used it to start my evening campfire. Mistake. The next morning, a black SUV rolled down my gravel drive like they owned the place. 3 people stepped out: Barbara, a man with sunglasses too shiny to be from around here, and another holding a giant binder. Mr. Rhodes, Barbara said, like we were co-workers, we need to review your non-compliance list. You're on private ranch land, I replied. Turn around. The man with the binder flipped pages with dramatic flair. The HOA has voted to expand regulation authority over boundary properties. You are now required to pay dues and remove visual blight. Visual blight? I asked. We're looking at it, Barbara said, wrinkling her nose at my cattle. They handed me a packet, stapled, color-coded, and ridiculous. I didn't read it. I didn't need to. This isn't a subdivision, I said. This is a ranch. I'm not signing anything. You have no authority here. Barbara smiled in that smug way only HOA presidents and airport security agents do. Well then, we'll handle it another way. They left, and that's when the real war started. It wasn't dramatic at first. Just annoyances. My garbage pickup missed a week, then 2, then 3. When I called the waste company, they claimed my account had been terminated due to safety concerns accessing the property. Funny, considering they'd been coming here every Tuesday for 10 years. Next, my feed supplier lost my order. My water delivery truck skipped me 3 times and claimed I didn't confirm the service. I drove into town to ask questions. People avoided eye contact. The feed store owner finally admitted what was happening. Rhodes, I'm sorry. The HOA called businesses, said you're in a legal dispute, that service on your land might violate insurance coverage. They scared folks. In other words, they blacklisted me. They wanted to starve me out. No feed for cattle, no supplies, no deliveries. If the animals suffer, the rancher either pays fines or gives up the land. Barbara thought I'd fold, but I'm not the folding type. I didn't yell, didn't threaten, didn't stomp into HOA headquarters and wave my fists. I just started documenting. I saved every blocked delivery notice, recorded every business refusing service, printed every email, and I had trail cams recording every time someone came to my gate. 3 weeks later, they escalated. My mail disappeared entirely. Packages never arrived. A certified letter came stamped, addressed, moved, undeliverable, as if my ranch had vanished. When I drove to the post office, the clerk tried to avoid me, but eventually cracked. Sir, there's been a complaint that your address isn't part of official delivery route, that you're not a legal residence. My ranch was registered in county records for 50 years, but someone had filed paperwork claiming the address didn't exist. Who would care enough to do that? Someone trying to force me off the land. Someone who wanted my property empty. Someone with an HOA binder and too much time. When I left the post office, I saw Barbara outside getting into her SUV. She already knew the conversation we just had. She smiled across the parking lot and called out, "Hard to live out here when nobody will serve you, huh? Most people just move into town. You could get a nice little house in Mesa Ridge." She wanted me boxed in like the rest of them: sterile homes, plastic siding, approved colors, and fences that never touched dirt. I said nothing, just stared. She patted her binder. "Don't worry, you'll break before we do." She was wrong because I wasn't looking to survive the harassment. I was getting ready to bury them with it. Most folks think revenge is loud, shouting, threats, swinging fists, lawyers on the porch, but real revenge, the kind that actually works, It's made of silence, signatures, and patience. While Barbara marched around the neighborhood like a sheriff in yoga pants, I spent my nights building a paper arsenal. Every skipped delivery, every cancelled order, every conversation recorded, dated, printed, and filed. I knew exactly what she was doing. Constructive eviction. If you can't starve someone legally, you try to starve them indirectly, destroy the ranch's operations until the land becomes abandoned or condemned. Except, I wasn't going anywhere. The breaking point came when my livestock vet refused to drive onto the property. My oldest mare got tangled in barbed wire. Nothing life-threatening, but she needed stitches. The clinic told me they couldn't legally enter a non-approved HOA zone. I drove her into town myself, blood in the trailer. The vet patched her up and told me quietly, "Rhodes, the HOA is threatening lawsuits for anyone doing business with you. Says you're under zoning enforcement and that your ranch is in legal dispute." There was no dispute, no zoning violations, no expansion of HOA authority. They were bluffing. I was done playing nice, so I called the county sheriff. Sheriff Dalton was old school Texas, boots, mustache, handshake like a cinder block. We'd gone to high school together, though he'd stayed in law enforcement while I'd gone into ranching. He came out that afternoon, he listened, took notes, nodded. Then he said the magic words, "Do you have proof?" I opened a binder thick enough to choke a horse. Emails from suppliers refusing deliveries, recorded phone calls with dates and names, proof of registered mail being marked undeliverable, pictures of HOA members at my gate placing notices, trail cam video of an HOA board member removing packages. Dalton leaned back in the chair and whistled. "Rhodes, this is organized harassment and mail interference," I added. "Federal affairs." He tapped a package photo page. "Did you say these were certified deliveries?" "Everyone." That changed everything. Tampering with certified mail wasn't just petty harassment, it was federal. Dalton stood, hat back on his head, and said, "I'll be back." 2 hours later, 3 patrol trucks rolled into Mesa Ridge. 4 deputies walked into the HOA office. The doors shut behind them. I didn't know what happened inside, but by the time the sheriff returned, Barbara wasn't smiling anymore. He handed me a temporary protection notice. The HOA was legally forbidden from contacting me or interfering with my property until an investigation was complete. Good start, but I wasn't finished. While the sheriff handled the criminal angle, I handled the civil one. I hired a lawyer in Austin, expensive but worth every penny. We filed civil harassment, business interference, defamation, fraudulent zoning claims, and the nuclear option, petition for punitive damages and land use retaliation. My lawyer smirked when he saw my evidence. "You documented this like a prosecutor. You know what happens when we file this." "Oh, I know," I said. "They're going to panic." And they did. 2 days later, the HOA lawyers called mine, then emailed, then tried calling me directly illegally. They offered deals. "If you drop the suit, we'll stop enforcement. If you pay dues for 1 year, we'll recognize the ranch as a special exemption." I rejected every offer. Then Barbara herself showed up on my property violating the court order. She pulled up in her SUV, shaking papers like confetti. "You think this will go your way?" she snapped. "You embarrassed us. No judge is going to side with a stubborn rancher who refuses community rules." I pointed at the camera facing my gate. "You're violating a no-contact order. Step off my property." Her face twitched. "You think you've won? You haven't even started losing." She sped off, tires spitting gravel. I called the sheriff again. She was served with a misdemeanor contempt charge. The subdivision message boards exploded. Homeowners were furious, not at me, but at her. My lawyer obtained screenshots. "We didn't vote for this. Why are we spending HOA funds on lawsuits? Why is the HOA president getting arrested? Why are we fighting a rancher who doesn't live here?" Seeds were cracking. Division was growing. And I still wasn't done. Because while they spent money on lawyers, one spent money on county permits, one for construction, one for business operation, one for sound compliance. When the paperwork was approved, I invited the sheriff over again. Dalton stepped onto my porch, looked at the blueprints, and burst out laughing. "You're really going to do it?" "Oh, I'm past going to," I said. "Because if an HOA wants to act like they control my land, I'll give them something on the border that legally makes their lives very, very loud, and very, very miserable." When most people build something on their land, they worry about how the neighbors will feel. Me. After weeks of being harassed, blacklisted, cut off from mail feed, and water deliveries, I wasn't worried about the neighbors. I was worried about making every bit of it legal, because nothing destroys an HOA faster than following the law better than they do. So I filed permits. I hired contractors, and 2 months after the first HOA letter appeared on my gate, the sound of diesel engines and machinery echoed across the border of Mesa Ridge. Barbara heard it before she saw it. Cameras caught her power walking down the subdivision sidewalk, arms flapping like she was trying to take flight. She stopped dead when she saw the sign. Lone Ridge Tactical Shooting Range, grand opening soon. She looked like her soul tried to crawl out of her body. The land had always been mine. Bordered the subdivision? Yes. Inside the subdivision? Absolutely not. Under county law, agricultural land could be repurposed into commercial shooting ranges as long as sound barriers were built, hours of operation respected noise ordinances. All firing lanes were positioned away from residential homes, and guess who had followed every rule down to the comma? Me. And guess who had loudly argued in town meetings for expanded recreational businesses to bring economic growth to Mesa Ridge? Barbara. She was on camera supporting it. She had, unintentionally, paved a legal road for my gun range. The sheriff even approved the safety plans. He personally inspected the berm's distance markers and bullet traps. The moment he signed, construction began. The HOA meltdown begins within the first week. The HOA sent letters. My lawyer laughed and sent each one straight to the judge. Then they tried something new. Neighborhood petitions. They collected signatures demanding that the range be relocated for safety. Only one problem. The petition was signed by people who didn't legally count as affected neighbors. The county didn't care. Next came media pressure, local news, dramatic interviews, and emotional speeches about dangerous gunfire threatening children. The reporter drove out to interview me. Judge, she asked, why put a gun range next to family homes? I pointed to my barn's security camera feed showing HOA members removing my packages, blocking delivery trucks, and placing fake violation notices. I didn't put anything next to them, I said. They tried to force themselves onto my land. The story aired with both sides. Public reaction wasn't what the HOA expected. You don't get to bully people and cry victim. Gun ranges are legal. HOA isn't a government. Maybe don't mess with ranchers. Every attempt to shame me only exposed what they had done. Meanwhile, construction continued. 10 covered lanes, sound-dampened walls, 25-foot dirt backstop, safety officers weekend, training classes for hunters and vet. Wasn't just legal, it was professional. And there was one more detail that broke Barbara's sanity. Offered discounted membership to everyone in the county, except Mesa Ridge homeowners. Nothing illegal, just delicious. Grand opening day, the HOA tried to stop it with a cease and desist. The judge shredded it. So on opening day, the parking lot filled with trucks, flags, and country folks eager to shoot. Veterans, hunters, sheriff deputies, even the county commissioner. At 10 a.m., the first round echoed across the fields. Boom. In Mesa Ridge, lawn chairs tipped over. Dogs barked. Barbara sprinted into the street waving her arms as if that would stop bullets. But every shot was legal. Every berm was approved. Every minute was within business hours. And when people asked why I opened a gun range, I answered loudly so the HOA across the fence could hear. Because I had to defend my property from people who don't understand boundaries. The sheriff chuckled. The HOA finally breaks within 2 months. Homes on the border of the subdivision went up for sale. Property values dropped. Buyers asked, isn't that the HOA that harassed the rancher? Half the board resigned. The remaining homeowners demanded change. They held an emergency meeting, which leaked online. Why are we being sued? Why are we spending HOA money fighting someone who doesn't live here? Who authorized this? All fingers pointed to Barbara. The board voted to remove her as president. The sheriff served her with the final notice. Civil judgment, $268,000 after legal fees and damages. And because harassment was proven, the HOA insurance refused to cover her. She paid out of pocket. She tried to sell her home, but nobody wanted to buy property next to the gun range she caused. Last I heard, she moved to another state, somewhere with strict HOA enforcement, according to her social media. Good luck to them. The best part, the gun range became a profitable business. Hunters used it. Sheriff departments trained on it. Veterans taught firearm safety to new shooters. The town supported it. The county loved the revenue. And every time Mesa Ridge heard a rifle crack in the distance, it was a reminder: if you try to starve a rancher off his own land, you'd better be ready for the sound of consequences. Because some people fight with fists, some with lawyers, but in Texas, we fight with paper. Then we build a gun range on the border. Most wars end with paperwork, not explosions. And in my case, the loudest part of the fight wasn't the gunfire, it was the silence afterward. Weeks passed. Then months. The gun range became part of everyday life in the county. On weekends, trucks lined the gravel road, men and women in ear protection waited their turn, and kids learned firearm safety from veterans who treated them like family. The very same sheriff who once took my statement now hosted his department's training here twice a week. Mesa Ridge, however, had gone silent for an HOA that once issued violations for crooked trash cans. The quiet was beautiful. No more letters, no more surprises at the gate, no more SUVs idling at the fence line, just the sound of distant shots, and the sound of the HOA dying slowly, property value by property value. But the silence didn't last. The day they returned it was nearly a year after the grand opening. A dusty Tuesday morning, sun barely up, coffee still steaming in my mug, when 3 cars rolled down my road, not SUVs with tinted windows, not angry board members with binders. These were regular homeowners, tired faces, bags under their eyes, wearing the look of people who had been fighting someone else's war and finally lost. The first man stepped out. His voice was apologetic before he even spoke. "Mr. Rhodes, we need your help." I leaned on the fence. "Funny, that's not what the last bunch said. We're not them. Barbara ruined this place." He gestured back toward Mesa Ridge, where for sale signs dotted the yards like tombstones. "Half the houses can't sell. The noise scares off buyers. The bank threatened foreclosure on the HOA. We're drowning." A woman stepped forward, shaking her head. "I didn't vote for any of this. None of us did. We tried to stop her. She lied about you. She lied about everything." I listened, didn't say a word. Because these were the people the HOA used as armor, innocent residents caught behind the decisions of a power-hungry president. They were victims too, whether they admitted it or not. Finally, the first man swallowed hard. "We wanted to ask if there's anything we can do to fix this. Not legally, just neighbor to neighbor." Neighbor. The word tasted strange after everything that happened. I could have laughed. I could have told them to deal with the consequences. I could have said the range stays forever out of spite. But I thought about something my father used to say. A ranch isn't just land, it's a legacy. You protect it by being better, not bitter. So I asked, what happened to Barbara? The woman smirked, almost relieved to share it. She left the state. HOA sued her for damages. Her own attorney turned on her. Apparently she tried the same stunt in her new neighborhood and got banned from the board before she even moved in. Poetic. And the HOA now? I asked, holding on with duct tape. The man said, new president, new board, different attitude. One rule, stay out of other people's business. That was the smartest sentence Mesa Ridge had spoken in years. The agreement. I invited them inside. No hostility, no guns, just coffee, chairs, quiet. They explained their plan. Dismantle most of the HOA's power, remove absurd bylaws / dues, turn the subdivision into a community, not a dictatorship. Then the offer came. We know we don't have the right to ask this, but if the range reduced hours, even slightly, it might give the neighborhood a chance to recover. Kids could sleep on weekends. We could sell homes again. People could breathe. They weren't demanding. They were pleading that it takes a certain type of person to ignore that. So we negotiated like adults, the thing the HOA should have done in the beginning. I offered reduced shooting hours on weekdays, no nighttime firing after 6 p.m., sound buffering trees along the fence line, free firearm safety classes for Mesa Ridge residents. They offered a formal written apology, a signed agreement stating the HOA would never attempt jurisdiction over my land, a community statement clearing my name publicly, and a donation to the sheriff's youth marksmanship program. Fair, reasonable, respectful, something the original HOA never understood. We shook hands, not grudgingly, not bitterly, just neighbors doing what neighbors should do. The new normal. That summer, something strange happened. Mesa Ridge homeowners, the same neighborhood that once tried to starve me out, began driving onto my property willingly. Some signed up for range memberships, some brought their teenagers for safety courses, some just sat under the pavilion and talked with that old man told me quietly, I voted for expansion of HOA authority. I thought it would keep the neighborhood nice. Didn't know it would turn us into prisoners. Another whispered, I'm glad you fought back. You reminded us we're still in Texas. Little by little, gunfire turned from a symbol of war to a reminder of peace. The lesson that echoed the HOA didn't collapse, it transformed. The new board put up a bulletin at the subdivision entrance. We exist to serve the community, not control it. The fence between us stayed, but the hostility faded. We waved when we passed on the road. Kids who once feared the sound of rifles now trained safely under supervision. Noise complaints disappeared. And the best part, Every time someone new moved in, the neighbors warned them, don't mess with the rancher's land. Respect goes both ways. Because, in the end, Mesa Ridge learned something the hard way. You can push a man, you can pressure him, you can threaten him, but if you try to starve him off his own land, you'd better pray he's the folding type. I wasn't. I fought, I built, and then, I forgave. Not for them, for the land, because this ranch will outlive every HOA, every board, every neighbor, and every argument. This land remembers who respected it, and it never forgets who tried to take it.